Welcome everyone to the final round of the Norway Chess 2025. So many things at stake in this one, with Arjun Erigaisi taking on Magnus Carlsen. Magnus, if he manages to win, he would be the winner of the tournament without any questions asked. But if Arjun manages to hold him to a draw, then it all depends on the game of Caruana and Gukesh as well. And Arjun personally also would like to really give Magnus a run for his money, because that would really end his tournament on a high. Arjun has played pretty well in this tournament. He managed to beat Gukesh, he managed to beat Wei twice in Armageddon's, and he also managed to beat Fabiano Caruana. There you see Magnus entering in, and Magnus looking very, very sharp. Of course, after midway through the tournament, Magnus did have a very tough result against Gukesh. But since then he's recovered, and we have the young boy making the first move with Magnus, giving him a nice smile. And the boy has played the move d4, is it? Yeah, I think it's d4. Arjun takes back the pawn quietly. We are ready to roll now. A handshake between the two, and off we go. What's Arjun's first move going to be? He pushes his pawn to d4. And Magnus takes his time and plays d5. He gets up from his chair, most likely will remove his jacket here. c4 played here by Arjun, Queen's Gambit. Yes, the jacket is off. And now Magnus here plays the move e6. It's time for the Queen's Gambit declined. And what is Arjun's choice? He goes knight to c3. Last rounds are always very pressurizing for all the players involved, but champions generally rise up to the occasion. Knight comes out to f6. Magnus is so good with these classical openings. That's also because he has such rich knowledge of classics that he's able to find his way through the mess. Even if he hasn't prepared too many openings, he knows how to fight in specific lines and so on. Now bishop g5, threatening to take on f6 and then take on d5. And now the bishop comes out to e7, breaking the pin. And white does play pawn to e3. The plan is to play bishop to d3, queen to c2, and so on, like knight f3 or knight e2. Black castles for now. And Arjun brings his bishop out to this important diagonal. This is the main line theory in the Queen's Gambit declined. You have moves like knight d7 here, c6. He plays pawn to h6. And now Arjun keeps the pin on the position. He puts his bishop on h4. And Magnus Carlsen now carefully pushes his pawn to c6. Interesting moment in the game, because the development of the g1 knight will determine the nature of the position. Knight goes to e2, which means Arjun will most likely go for this f3 e4 setup. So knight goes to d7. And black's plan is to just go rook e8 and maybe put the knight on e4. For the time being, Arjun simply shot castles. And Magnus now has to decide how to continue here. He goes pawn to a5. And this move a5 is aimed at stopping the queen side expansion, the minority attack, which generally happens with rook b1, b4. Arjun pushes his pawn to f3, taking control of the very important e4 square. He does weaken the e3 square a bit, That's part of it. And Magnus goes b5. This is the main move according to the engine. But it does weaken the c6 pawn. And it has to be treaded carefully here. Arjun plays his queen to c2, putting pressure on the c6 pawn. And Magnus now has to decide what is his plan here. Magnus plays his rook to e8, putting his rook on e8, looking at the e3 square, so that later on if he moves his knight away, take would attack this pawn. But Arjun can actually push forward. Yes, he goes e4. A very nice move by Arjun, but also a very, very risky position now for both sides, because Magnus plays pawn to b4. And his point here is that if you play knight a4, then I'm simply going to take. Yes, Arjun goes knight a4. Now d takes e4. Bishop is hanging, so f takes e4. And that has happened. And now this entire thing hinges upon this idea of sacrificing the knight, or maybe c5 move also is not so stupid, because knight g4 also possible to look here, but knight g4 is met with take and rook f3. But knight e4, what a beautiful move. And the point is, of course, if you take with the bishop, I'll take on h4, so you have to take on e7. He takes. And now queen takes e7, and Arjun here has a very, very deadly move under his sleeve. He takes on c6, attacking the rook here. Now, very important to note that a move like rook b8, which Magnus wants to play to prepare bishop b7, is met with rook takes f7, a crazy move. Queen f7 is met with bishop c4, king f7 with also bishop c4 with a huge attack, which is why Magnus goes back n e f6. But it's a huge shock for Magnus that rook b8 or rook a7 does not work. So now Arjun actually goes in and captures the rook. Magnus comes in with a check on e3. He's attacking the bishop on d3. But Arjun is currently a rook up. Now he takes on d3. So it's exchange up for Arjun. And that's quite a serious material advantage. Knight jumps to f4, attacking the queen. Now the queen can take the pawn here, or could go back to b5, attacking the knight. Many possibilities. He takes the pawn on d4. Now rook to c1 to put pressure on c8, because this bishop doesn't have good squares to go to. Arjun first brings his rook to d1, attacking the queen. The queen has to move away. Queen e5 played. And now Arjun can actually attack this bishop here on c8 with rook to c1. And he brings his rook to c1. The bishop is trapped on c8. It cannot move. But at the same time, when you take on c8, there's also the f4 knight hanging because of rook e1 checkmate. So that's the reason why Magnus blocks the last rank, so that if rook takes c8, there is queen takes f4 possible. It's a very deep concept here by Magnus, but a very strong one. Arjun nonetheless takes the bishop. He's now a piece up, in addition to being an exchange up, but Magnus takes on f4. Now if you take on e8, I have mate here. And if you take the queen, I have checkmate. But Arjun finds the most amazing move, not only defending the rook, but also defending this rook. Queen takes rook by Magnus Carlsen. Queen takes queen. And now rook takes c8. Now if you notice this position, we have one pawn, one knight and one rook for the queen. That's 9 points versus 9. However, the only problem here for black is that the queen side pawns are weak and the queen can enter and start plucking them. So Magnus is not going to be able to save these pawns. What he can do in the meanwhile is he can think about entering on the king side with his knights and try to create counterplay against the white king. That's the only way he can survive here. Arjun for now says, hey Magnus, I'm not at all afraid of your attacking possibilities. He goes queen to a6, a very logical and strong move, attacking the a5 pawn. Magnus goes rook d5, defending the pawn. How will Arjun create counterplay now? Does he go knight b6, hitting the rook here? Yes, he plays it. Knight to b6. Fantastic move. And now rook d1 check is possible, but then I'll simply go king h2. So he goes rook c5, keeping the rook defended, keeping the pawn on a5 defended. And Arjun now brings his knight back to c3, an excellent move, not only blocking the rook's action, but also attacking the a5 pawn. And now knight to e6 played here by Magnus. Is it time to chop off this pawn? It is actually. Can Arjun find the courage to do it? Opening up black's rook. He has 32 minutes. Magnus has 32 minutes. Arjun has 26 minutes and takes it. Arjun Erigaisi captures the pawn. Magnus now, not only is he a queen down, but he also lost one more pawn. So now he has only rook and knight for the queen. G5 played. Magnus wants to create counterplay by opening up the white's king here. It is something that he has now his final hopes on. If Arjun finds accurate moves, he should be winning. He brings his knight back. He stops the rook from getting active down to the c file. But now can Magnus go g4 and open up the position? He writes down his move. 26 minutes to Magnus Carlsen, 21 minutes to Arjun Erigaisi. Magnus does push g4. And now it's not so easy how to deal with it for Arjun. Should he push the pawn? Should he take the pawn? Should he move his king up to defend the pawn? So many different options and not too much time. He goes b3, he ignores this. He says, I'm going to protect my knight so that my queen can be freed up and then I'll go after your b4 pawn. Magnus is like, I don't care about my queenside pawns anymore. You can go and make your queen. I am coming at your king. And how am I going to come at your king? I'm going to use my rook and two knights to achieve it. Rook h5 played. A fantastic move here. And Arjun must go king g2. But then there's knight f4 check. You have to be careful here. Instead, Arjun goes king h2, which is a mistake because of knight g5. And you're giving up a piece for this very interesting perpetual. This loses the queen. But if you take here, it's a check. So somehow you have to keep moving check, check, check on h and g file. It's a beautiful line and Magnus can actually play knight g5 and get a equal position. But Magnus here prefers to play king g7. Not at all a bad move, but not as direct as knight g5. And now Arjun Erigaisi trying to figure out the position. You can see Magnus's body language. He feels more confident. He's getting up. He's moving around. Arjun feels a little bit stressed out here. And Arjun plays his queen to b7. Now his idea is to keep an eye on this diagonal, but also to capture the pawn here on b4. Also to go in with the knight to d6 to attack the f7 point. So multi-purpose move here. And Magnus must go knight g5. There's no other way that he can create counterplay. And he does play knight to g5, attacking this pawn on h3. Arjun Erigaisi needs to figure now what to do, because knight d6 may be an option. Oh, he plays it. He plays it. He's like, Magnus, you want to take these pawns? Take it. But I'm going here. But this pawn is defended. Knight is defending this pawn. So I'm not so sure what Arjun's going to gain out of this. But firstly, Magnus must capture the pawn on h3. Magnus being super calm, cool here. He has 13 minutes and he takes on h3. Arjun has 12 minutes on the clock, moves his king to g2. And now there could be a threat potentially to take on f7, because if knight f7, the rook on h3 is hanging. So maybe it's time for us to move this rook away. Yes, he plays rook d3, attacking the knight on d6. And where does the knight go? Can it go to a check here on f5, or maybe you can take this pawn as well? He goes knight f5 check. King g6. Not at all clear is this position. Who's better? That's also a question here. King g6 played. Right now the engine is like it's 0.00. Well, we don't understand what 0.00 means. Does it mean that right now white is in trouble? Does it mean black is in trouble? Who has more resources here? No one understands this position. I believe even Magnus and Arjun are struggling right now with the time that they have. It's so complicated. And with the king being smoked out, it in fact becomes even an aggressive piece, in the attack. Queen takes b4, a mistake by Arjun Erigaisi, but what could be more natural than to pick up the pawn on b4? Now, you go knight e4. The best move in the position was queen a6, but that ship has sailed now. Knight f e4 is Magnus's best choice. Will he find it? Magnus has 8 minutes 20 seconds. He's moving his hand to the knight. He was about to move it, but then brings it back. Pretty sure Magnus is going to play this move. He just understands these positions really well. And he looks at Arjun. He looks at Arjun and he then looks at the board. Plays it. Beautiful move by Magnus Carlsen. And all of a sudden, look at this knight controlling g3. This knight controlling these two squares. Rook controlling the third rank. But it could very well now start controlling the second rank. Very important move now for Magnus. Rook d2. He finds it. Cuts the king off. Think about it. Knight g3 check and knight f3 is a mate. It's nothing more brutal can be found. Queen b5 by Arjun. He pins this knight on g3 and here's the winning move here. f5 is the winning move. Because if queen f5 there's knight g3. If knight f5 played then rook f2 check and it's a checkmate because now this is blocked. So I go knight f3 check, king here and knight c3. Goodbye to the queen. Let's see what Magnus plays here. Can he find the move? f5. He looks carefully at the board. And I believe a player of Magnus's caliber is capable of finding a move like f5. But no, he goes rook d1 check. The time is actually getting to him perhaps. 5 minutes to Magnus. King g2 played by Arjun. It's still winning for Magnus. Rook d2 check. This repetition will give Magnus 10 seconds more per move because for every move you repeat, you get 10 seconds extra on the clock after 40 moves here. King g4 played. And he's bringing his king in. But what about rook queen f5 check? Blocking the king from coming any further. King comes up to g3. Magnus very calmly moving his king. Remember his game with Gukesh where his king went all the way down to the board and then got into trouble. But here the king is moving very, very wisely and very carefully, tiptoeing around the white queen and the knight. King goes to f3, threatening mate in 1. Rook d1 check is a checkmate. So again a check by Arjun. It's time to move the king to e3. Not at all an easy decision. So Magnus first goes king g3. He's like, I'm not convinced that I have to move my king there. Arjun quickly gives a check. For Arjun, a draw is good enough here, I believe. Because Arjun's assets are his queenside pawns. To make them into queen is going to take an entire eternity. Meanwhile, the two knights, rook and the black king, is launching a very serious attack. Now look at Magnus's time. He has 1 minute 16 seconds. Very logical is to take a draw here. But Magnus is like, I want to play for a win. And what a great character shown by Magnus Carlsen. He's like, I will fight till the end. King d4 played and he wants to win this tournament. He wants to win this game. He wants to end this Norway chess on a high. King e1, but Arjun Erigaisi is also fighting very rapidly. He's like, Magnus, you have only 30 seconds left. Magnus chops off the pawn. The rook moving to the other side was a better move, but this one also makes a lot of sense. Rook takes a2, queen d7 found by Arjun. Beautiful move. Rook a1 check. The king has to move. Rook a2 check. And king e1. Now in order to continue playing for a win, you must go knight c5. But Magnus had only 4 seconds. He again repeats. And this time, is he okay with a draw? Or is Arjun going to fight somehow? I don't see Arjun has any way to fight. And Arjun here calls the arbiter. He says, I'm going to play king e1. And it's threefold repetition here. Magnus tries to look at his score sheet. I don't know if Magnus is happy or sad with this result. Because it seems like it's a 3. He makes the move king e1. And Magnus is looking at the board. He's waiting for the arbiter's verdict. draw here, and f5 instantly shown by Arjun in that position where instead of bringing his king to g4, f5 was winning, and he was absolutely right. He could have won this position, f5, and then you can see Magnus, all that he needs is couple of seconds, and he realizes that he was completely winning. But of course Arjun also has something to be unhappy about, because he was completely better throughout the game almost, but once Magnus started coordinating his two knights and the rook and this king coming in, it became a massive attack on the white king. Now with this draw, Magnus Carlsen has officially sealed Norway Chess 2025, because the game between Gukesh and Caruana on the adjoining board has ended in a win for Caruana. So Magnus no longer has to depend on his Armageddon result for his first place. He has got the first place, but he has to play the Armageddon still. And I love how they both are analyzing with each other, and Magnus is really enjoying this bit of analysis. I remember there were times when Arjun would ask a lot of questions to Magnus, and Magnus, would answer them, but it definitely felt like a relationship where Arjun was learning a lot. This right now feels more like a discussion. They both are discussing with each other as equals, maybe trying to just analyze it, and they exchange the score sheets, and Arjun has more questions. I think Arjun really enjoys analyzing with Magnus, and of course every chess player loves that, because he is the greatest player on the planet right now, and every few minutes that you get with him to analyze helps you to fine-tune your understanding of chess. And look at Arjun there, trying to listen to Magnus very intently. So all of this is learning experience. Even though Arjun is world number 3 right now, still he is carefully listening to Magnus, and maybe that's the reason why he's reached world number 3. He's all the time wanting to learn from all the experiences. Magnus is laughing, and Arjun also very animated. And so after this game, they had a break of 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes. They came back for the Armageddon game, where Arjun will have 10 minutes on the clock, Magnus will have 7 minutes, and the one who manages to win there will take half a point extra. Arjun puts back the pieces, and in the Armageddon game, well, Magnus actually got checkmated, and he resigned with a smile, because it was victory for Magnus in the tournament, but a very nice win for Arjun, and he congratulates Magnus there. After this game ended, Magnus was swarmed by media all around. They were curious to know whether Magnus will continue playing classical chess or not. Turns out Magnus will still play classical chess in the future. He's not retiring by any means right now. We also, and there you see him signing a few autographs and then going to the main studio. We also asked Arjun what he felt about his win.
Congratulations, great finish to the tournament. Are you happy with this game?
Yeah, maybe the Armageddon, yes, but clearly he had nothing to play first, so he wasn't that motivated.
But you played well, right?
Perhaps for the Armageddon standard.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.